So welcome to this virtual music education conference series addressing music teacher education in the age of COVID-19. Tonight's topic is learning to teach online, a new kind of collaborative education. This session will explore how we as college professors work with our music education majors and others to collaboratively learn and enact best practices in online education. We especially welcome practicing K-12 teachers to this session, and we are excited to hear your thoughts. We aim to use some of these best practices in this session, and as such, we are excited to have all participants join in the conversation. If you wish to ask a question or offer a comment, please post using the chat or hand raise features. The icon for chat is located at the bottom of your Zoom window. Similar questions from the chat may be combined and addressed by the discussion leaders, or the leaders may call on you to share your thoughts. If you are called upon, please remember to unmute your microphone before speaking. The microphone icon is located at the bottom left corner of your screen or on your photo. In just a moment, the session leaders will take a few minutes to frame the topic of this session. We will then open the floor for questions and discussion. The session leaders will offer some concluding thoughts towards the end of our time together before the moderator introduces the next session in the series. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's session moderators, Janice P. Smith of the Aaron Copland School of Music, Queens College City University of New York, and myself, Michele Kaschub of the School of Music at the University of Southern Maine. Additionally, we are joined by three guests, all students at the University of Southern Maine, Bree Hull, Emily Lascatra, and Esri Donangelo. So let's dive right in. Jan?
There's a difference between the kind of emergency teaching that so many of you have done this spring that's best, Michele refers to it as survivalist methodology, and I think that's a good way to characterize it. And that contrasted with true online teaching where you plan on teaching that way and can use the well-researched best practices that we know of. Now, we know that many of us may not want to see our courses move into online environments, but present reality kind of suggests that this is what's going to be part of this future in educational practice. And that because our courses will be online, and so will many of the students we're preparing to teach, we feel it's important to emphasize the way things can be done with proper planning, as well as the survivalist mentality that we've had to all survive this spring.
So our question tonight is, how do we develop best practices in music teacher education in this new reality? Is there a body of effective practices that we can draw upon? There is a considerable body of literature exploring online teaching practice, but much of that literature addresses courses that use read, think, write structures. There is far less literature addressing how to deliver hands-on or doing focused courses that are the very foundation of what we offer in a music education degree.
Let's look at what we already know. As we present an overview of some key best practices in online teaching from the existing literature, we invite you to be thinking about how these practices might be adapted to fit the classes that have traditionally involved more face-to-face learning experiences, such as peer teaching, field experiences, instrumental vocal techniques, courses, and so on.
So one of the things that I have drawn on from the existing literature and from my own experience in this semester has been the idea of how important it is to listen to our students. And it's important to listen to them when using a positive and productive prompt. You know, we can't reinvent our courses in a vacuum, and we really need to hear about our students and their experiences. And to that end, I've invited three of my students to share some of their thoughts relating to their experiences as online students and their concerns as teachers who may be required to teach online in the future. Emily, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Leskar, and like Dr. Kaschub said, I'm a student at the University of Southern Maine, studying music education. And as in my experience as an online student has taught me that although all of us are behind our screens, we can still actively participate in the communities that we've built at school. For example, the thing that you know, a lot of ensembles around the world are doing recording projects where they individually will record their parts, whether it be vocal or instrumental ensemble, and then send those tracks to either a professor or another student in the ensemble, and put it all together to create a final project. And we did that at a couple ensembles at our school, and it was really cool for me to see and hear the finished product. And it made me realize that we don't need to physically be together to feel part of a community. I know that that's something that I was very upset about when schools decided to turn to remote learning, was that I wouldn't be able to sing with some of the groups I'm in anymore, and it was very upsetting. But seeing the product that we made was uplifting, that, you know, we can still feel as though we are a part of this community and not need to be physically with each other. And I think as a student who may, as a future teacher who may deliver some instruction online, I think something that I'll strive for is building my courses and ensembles in a way that students will feel like they belong somewhere and are still in a community, even if they aren't physically with the other students.
Thank you, Emily. Bree?
Yes, to that end, one of the biggest benefits that I found out of the remote learning situation was a lot of contact with a lot of my professors, having professors reaching out and keeping that that sense of community, but with professors, and just having them checking in constantly, and kind of making sure that I knew what the expectations were for the course now that they've changed, but also just professors checking in to make sure that I was doing well, that I had everything that I needed, even outside of educational needs. And just that sort of sense of community and being close with the professors and the reaching out, that had a huge impact on my success this semester with remote learning.
Thank you, Bree. Esri?
Yeah, and on top of that, for teaching online, what is extremely important for both students and teachers alike is organizing assignments, especially in one place. I had some professors who would have a syllabus where everything was on there, everything was very clearly laid out, and other professors who would occasionally email an assignment or two. And while both are perfectly good ways to run an online course, it is much easier both on the student end and on the teacher end to have everything in one place. So being able to organize that is extremely beneficial. On top of organization, I particularly found that having scheduled class meetings, in this case it was synchronous with how we were meeting before everything got shut down, but having synchronous class meetings with your students helps to serve as sort of a check-in point multiple times in the week to help keep you on track, to help students understand where they are, where they need to go, and check in with the teacher in an environment where other students can also perhaps have the same questions. That was extremely beneficial to me and a lot of my fellow peers, and I feel like a lot of teachers should put that in going forward.
Thank you, Esri. So one of the things that I think is important to hear in students' comments are ways that they feel that they can be successful online, and then to try to model some of our course design with those things in the forefront of our planning. What is it that makes the best experience for our students? And that's very much going to vary from course to course. I also asked these students to project ahead a little bit. Emily is headed for her senior year, as is Bree. Esri is headed for his junior year. So I asked them what they were concerned about as we move into next fall, where our formats are still up in the air a little bit as to how courses will work. Emily, did you want to start?
Sure. Something that I expressed a little bit of concern about for the upcoming semesters was field work. I know that that's something that I was disappointed on missing out on towards the second end of this, or the second half of the semester, and I'm interested in knowing more about what field work will look like if we are still, you know, teaching somewhat remotely.
Thank you. Bree?
So one of my biggest concerns going forward is regarding a lot of the methods or technique courses that we were taking. My biggest struggle was with the techniques course that I took this semester. Just as a vocalist myself, it was just, I found it a lot more difficult to learn a new instrument over this sort of medium. So sort of navigating how to teach a brand new instrument over this medium is something that I am finding a little bit challenging.
Bree, the other day when we spoke, you were talking specifically about string techniques and your experience with the cello. Can you just quickly give us a couple of sentences about the challenges there?
Yeah, of course. So it was kind of set up so that we had we met as a class almost every week, and then in between that we would also have like a 15-minute cello lesson. And one of my first cello lessons online, I had never touched a cello in a class. We were just starting on it, so it was brand new. And one of the biggest things that I struggled with was I spent one of my cello lessons just learning how to set it up, how to get the end pin out, how to fix my posture correctly so that I could play it correctly. And then we found out that my cello was too big for me, and so that caused some problems. And then going forward from that, just like very technical things like bow technique and things like that, I struggled with that quite a bit. And I had done pretty successfully on violin in person before, so it just like the mode of learning was just a big challenge for me.
Thanks, Bree. One of the other things you mentioned the other day was just figuring out where to put the camera so that the cello instructor could see you with the cello, right? So there are all kinds of unique hurdles. Esri.
Yes.
Yeah, so my biggest concern going forward is with ensembles and ensemble works. Of course, rehearsals are going to be a whole different eggshell to work with, but when it comes down to releasing a product, a lot of the products going forward are going to be virtual or digital concerts. So while it has been done, going forward, ensembles will want a much more consistent sound as we adapt to the new technologies. And being able to have access to the proper mics, to the proper setups, may not be possible for public institutions. And on top of that, with ensembles, we lose the innate listening aspect that we have as we are performing and listening to others around us. We aren't able to bounce musical ideas off of each other in the moment that we are performing. So we have to figure out ways to work around that as well.
Thank you, Esri. So, as is made apparent from Bree, Emily, and Esri's comments, there's a need for us to figure out how to preserve human connection while practicing empathetic teaching and learning. And I think we have to be very cognizant of what our students will see, feel, think, hear, and say as they experience the learning opportunities that we are designing. Their experience is critical to their success.
And part of it is that we have to be able to model the effective teaching in that. It's hard when you're first adjusting to teaching online to then begin to model the practices the way that you want your students to be able to use them. And it's an adjustment period for everybody. But if you use that business of listening to what the students are saying about it and what the difficulties are that they're having and adjust accordingly, that's sort of what they're going to have to do. If you can't figure out where to put the camera so that the teacher can see the cello, you've got to figure out a way that that works. And you may be able then to help people down the line figure out how to place their cameras and that sort of thing. So one of the real important things, I think, is that we have to figure out how to model what it is we want our students to be able to do. But that means we have to figure out how to model it as well. Then give the students the opportunity to practice using these techniques and strategies by using online peer teaching. I don't know if in your methods classes they were doing that at USM, where you had to teach somebody else how to do what it was you were learning. I'm seeing some nodding heads going on there. So that's a great thing. And I think we can do that still in an online environment. It's not the same as when you can be right there and say, no, no, hold your hand like this, you know, that sort of thing. But I think with some adjustments, that sort of practice can go on. I don't think we should eliminate those peer teaching sessions. I think they need to be a very important part of what we're doing, but there has to be opportunities for the students to do the teaching in order for us to be able to help them present a good model for their students down the road.
Yeah, Jan, thank you. And I think one of the other things we have to really be thinking about is, in this COVID-19 crisis teaching, we could all rely on pre-existing relationships. And we've just heard from these students about how important community is. Those relationships will still be in place with our continuing students, but we will need to create new relationships with our incoming freshmen or transfer students. And we have to think a little bit about how are we going to create that social connectedness. So one of the things that I found at the end of the semester, I teach a large course called Pro Seminar, which has all of our music ed students in it. And we had a discussion as a group about what did you learn as a student in this, and how will you put on your teacher hat and use what you learned as a student going forward. And having those kinds of conversations is really valuable. So, you know, for me, and I'm hoping that everybody will chime in and think about these things a little bit, but I'm really thinking about having a pre-course social Zoom meeting with all of my new students coming in, so that we have an opportunity to play some of our getting to know you games and introduce everybody and really create a sense of community. Peer mentorships with continuing students matched to new students is going to be a critical part of our movement forward. We have a very engaged music ed community at my institution, where students are very supportive of one another. And so I'm hoping to capitalize on that right away and have our continuing students matched up with our newbies. And also to try to put into place some ongoing social events. So game nights or some kind of shared streaming movie night, or, you know, whatever the students think is the thing to do, but something that's not about coursework and not about getting assignments in, but just a social aspect that draws us together in a time when we may not be able to be physically together. So those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about and some of the things that students have shared with me. Jan?
I think too that I'm going to piggyback a little bit on that. I do that sort of thing in almost every online class that I've taught, where I do either a scavenger hunt or some other type of, it may not be terribly relevant to the content of the class, but something where we all get to know each other and where we do some talking and some discussing before the content of the class is actually part of it. I think you have to be careful in online classes because it's very easy for us to, I want to say devolve, but that's not the right word, but students need to feel that you're there, but at the same time, you shouldn't be controlling everything that goes on in the class. And it's sort of like helicopter teaching. You want to be there and help them in whatever way you can, but at the same time, they've got to solve some of those problems and they've got to talk to each other. I think the best learning goes on when you've posed a problem and they have to talk to each other and work with each other to try to figure it out. And it can be really hard to keep the teacher presence sort of in the background while the students work through things, because you want to jump in and take control of it. But if you do, they don't learn how to solve the problems themselves. One of the things that I've used a lot is short videos. And when I say short, I mean somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. And it kind of, part of me as a teacher in a real classroom is that there's a sense of humor and a sense of tolerance. And there are some things that I want my students to get from me. And without those short videos, they don't really know who I am as a person and as a teacher. And I think it's important not only for them to connect with each other, but to connect with you as an instructor too. I think too that smaller chunks and more frequent connections are better than a 90-minute class that's once a week and you do it all the time, or an hour video that you tell them what was wrong with their project or whatever. I try to think in terms of smaller chunks, but more often. So if it's a class that would typically, some of mine are like an hour and a half long. I try to think in terms of a 30-minute section, and maybe in another 30 minutes you start out by reviewing what you did last time, what's new, and what's going to go on next time, and try to get that all in the 30 minutes and still have time for discussion and questions from your students. So teacher presence can be a really important thing in terms of online teaching. And it isn't just that you're sitting back and watching what goes on in the class. You've got to be there, but not there all the time.
Yeah, I think another really important thing about those videos, Jan, I was just reading an article the other day, and I'd have to go dig for it, but it was talking about how much time we are all spending staring at our screens and staring at pictures of ourselves. And the research was not with this environment, but it was with mirrors. And it took a group of people who were age, I think it was like 14 to 20, and had them stare at a mirror for 60 seconds. And 60% of the students staring at that mirror started to list off things that were wrong with them. Things that were wrong with their physical appearance, things that just nitpicky, their background, anything. But it only took 60 seconds for those students to start to have a negative impression of themselves when they're looking at themselves. So if we teach back-to-back classes and students are in classes for 7 hours, so we've got, what is that, 420 minutes they're staring at themselves and figuring out what's wrong with themselves. So a lot of times you'll see students turn off their cameras. They're just tired of seeing themselves. They're still there. They just don't want to look anymore. So I think that's something we really need to think about, because each one of us has one of those 90-minute classes and we're like, it's only 90 minutes, that's fine. But in totality, in a music program, in a music ed program, they might have classes that go 8 hours or longer in a day. They can't stare at themselves and be on the screen for that long. So we really need to work with our colleagues about managing time in a whole new way.
I also use videos, those short videos, as a way of grading. You can, in a Word document, you can embed your comments as a video, and it somehow makes me more human than it is when I just write the comments on it. And it's usually shorter for me to record a video than it is to actually write it.
Yeah, I also think we need to start thinking a little bit about our learning activities and providing some different packaging for them. For example, we might have one project that everyone's doing, but we might have 3 different product options. So something I did with a choral methods class this semester was I had students working with warm-ups and designing warm-ups. Some of them wrote out what they would do. Some of them made short videos and posted them in a closed Facebook group. Others did a mixture of that, but I gave them options for how they wanted to package their product, and just gave them different places to be and let everybody find their own comfort zone with that activity. So I think anytime we can give options, it's really great. I think the other thing we need to start looking into, and Gina Greer, you were talking about this back in session 1 last week, but to look at project-based learning and to really design collaborative projects that we can do with our K-12 teachers, with our mentors. What are things that our music ed students can do with their students that allow our students to gain teacher skills and help our mentors advance their students through, you know, extra eyes, ears, and attention in this format. And then I also think we need to really just be thinking about the concept of iteration. Every time we have one of these Zoom meetings with our students, or whatever platform you're looking at, is an opportunity to reflect and think about that interaction and make small changes to tweak it up to next, you know, for next time. I've just put in the chat, I said like I've just put in the chat, I've just put in the chat, a link to a book that I have found really useful. I also run the Professional Development Center at our university, and I've just bought this for all of our summer faculty. But it's a book called Small Teaching Online, and its predecessor was just called Small Teaching. And it's a concept that comes from baseball, and I won't go far on this because I'm not really a baseball person, but there is an idea in baseball, as I understand it, where making lots of small changes can have a big impact on the game. And this book goes through small changes that you can do in your online teaching that have a big impact for you and your students. So I encourage you to check that book out.
So now what we'd like to do is kind of brainstorm together and get some suggestions from all of you and any other ideas that you have about how we might apply all of this in a more hands-on experience so that our students are prepared for both face-to-face teaching and online environments. If you're new to the online format or curious about a particular topic and you've got questions, we invite you to ask them. If you have experience with online teaching, we hope you'll share. And then use the chat feature, as Michele mentioned in the beginning, or use the raise your hand feature found in participants. Try to be at least a little succinct so that everybody has a chance to offer ideas and allow everyone to have something to say. So, do we have any questions coming up? Oh, you're being shy. We need you to
Marta Frey.
You had touched on peer teaching and the importance of continuing with peer teaching online, which I appreciate because that's a center piece of my methods courses. This last semester, I happened to not have any methods courses, and so I didn't have to figure out how to adapt that. But I did teach oral skills courses this last semester, and I tried to use breakout rooms where I would have students just work on tasks in duets, just pair them up as twos. And even two students paired up, they told me they just could not perform something together with all the lags that Zoom has. And I'm trying to envision taking an elementary methods course and having someone teach their peers without, I'm not sure if I'd have the class mute themselves or if I would try to have live feedback from 20 people and it's just not gonna sync up. And I'm having trouble imagining how to navigate the logistics of this. And I'm wondering if anyone's done peer teaching online and has any pointers.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. This is Anita Kumar, Georgia State University. So yeah, I had two methods courses that were in the last month before we had to go online, and we had done none of our peer teaching for the semester in one of them and only half of it in the other. And so I gave them some choices of synchronous or asynchronous. One class had already been working on asynchronous online learning in terms of assessment collection. And so for that, it was, they would introduce something asynchronously and then their peers would reply asynchronously on video and or through a Google form of some kind, working on formal and informal assessment in that manner. Then for the other class, they had a choice between synchronous and asynchronous, and about 2/3 of the class did synchronous. And in one group in particular, there's 4 of them, and they all did recorder videos, which was hilarious. And so, yeah, exactly what you're saying with the lag. Basically, some of them just decided it was okay. They're only playing hot cross buns anyway. It's not the end of the world if it's asynchronous, or if it's not completely in sync. Others did the whole muting and had people play one at a time. One of the nice things is that they all noticed that that helped reinforce individualized assessment. So if you can find the ways that it's important to do things individually and emphasize those, then it might feel less like you're losing out on the things that you mean to do collectively or in real time. Now, I don't know that if those same, I have those same students for like 3 semesters in a row, and I don't know if it's going to keep being worthwhile if we were to have to do this again for another semester. But at least in a 1 semester instance, it wasn't the end of the world and they all learned something valuable from it.
Thank you, Anita. Gina?
Her hand went down. I don't know for sure. Gina Greer, are you there?
Okay, there I am. Okay. A little technology snafu. So one of the things that I did this semester with my students is I had them do little mini sessions with each other, put them into groups of 2 or 3 into little breakout rooms. And one of the things that one of the tools that we used was Soundtrap a lot because it'll to collaborate musically in real time without that lag. So it's just understanding what's available to you and being able to design small little mini teaching sessions. You put them into little breakout rooms and have them all come back together. And a lot of the feedback I got this semester from my students was that they were really worried once we went online. They missed seeing their friends, yeah, but they were really glad when they got into class every week. And we just continued doing what we normally would do in real life online. So we were able to keep that sense going through those like little mini moments.
Chris Gilbert's hand is up. If you can, Michelle, recognize that.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Gilbert. I am in upstate New York, and I'm a K-12 educator. I'm also working on my CAS in college teaching. So a little perspective from the K-12 side of things and what has been successful for me with my students. I teach middle school band and middle school modern band, music technology, and composition. And even my 6th graders are able to handle recording their parts into Soundtrap. Soundtrap is not a live collaboration in terms of they can play together at the same time and have it recorded. It's like one kid can record their part and someone else maybe work on their part somewhere else, and they save and then they have to click on sync. So it's not on like live how we wish it all could be, because the tech is not there. It's not going to be there until there's equitable access to all students. And my district is a rural district, and a lot of my students don't have equitable access to internet or quality access to internet. And even though I'm a paid educator, my internet is not the same as my neighbor's internet. So that's always an issue as well. But even 6th graders were able to figure out, or were able to navigate doing this in Soundtrap where they recorded their parts, and we created like I called it band together, and we were able to play one of our band pieces together. And I just created that sound file. I had to tweak a few things to edit out the screaming yell in the background, or yes, and where I teach there's farm animals or farm animal sounds, but that always creates interesting experiences. But even though it's not a true, fully authentic experience, they're hearing each other's parts as they go into Soundtrap and are reacting to that as well. I did provide like a click track, backtrack with that as well. And the next step to that beyond that was that I've done several virtual ensembles with my students as well, which is, it's not, as you all know, it's not show up to Zoom and play. It's hours and days and hours and then some more hours and days of video and audio editing. But I also question about if it's I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it short. I'm sorry.
You're okay. Keep going. I'll cut you off if you need to be cut off first.
Just start playing the playoff music like on the Oscars. But I also question about like the amount of time that I'd spend with my students between January and May for a spring concert is about 20 to 25 hours with breaks and whatever built in, and we'd prepare 3 to 5 pieces. And that same amount of time that I spent editing a video, we can only do 1 piece. Does that make it worth it or not? So that's where I start to go, it's a feel good thing and bringing the community together. I mean, they are getting to hear each other through the recording as they play each their parts in, but we also have to keep in sight, like, how much is our time worth as well? Thank you.
Because I know, Chris, I'm going to jump in here a little bit. Chris, have you done any online composing with your kids this spring?
Yes, I have.
Would you like to just say any? I have an agenda here, as you can tell, right? But because we are a bunch of us that are involved in this chat tonight are interested in doing composing with children, and I know that you do that, I'm just going to ask you to speak briefly about that.
Sure, and I promise I will try to keep it brief, or just get the virtual hook.
Sure.
Some of the composition projects that I've done with my students is what I call like a code breaker project, where they have to pick from 2, like they learn how to play ukulele, guitar, bass, keys, drums in a typical format, but I'll tell you, no one has these instruments at home right now.
Right.
Because they're shared and they're at school, and we departed school suddenly with really, I'll say, no warning. But we do like a code breaker composition. We utilize virtual instruments and different tools like that to experience that composition. Note flight, even just using note flight, and I give them different exercises and composition through note flight. Another composition, I do like a tic-tac-toe composition with them where they have to test it kind of like music theory 4 and doing the 12-tone matrices style, but using only four chords, you know, plop in the chords in the grid and then test out the rows and columns and diagonals, and then that creates the basis of their first chorus form of having choose one row for an introduction, choose another row for a verse, choose another row for a chorus, and choose another row for a bridge, and then we have the form of the song. And 7th and 8th graders have been doing this. I also do a social justice project where they have to pick a topic of social justice and compose the backtrack in Soundtrap and record themselves, either like spoken word over the backtrack, or if they wanted to rap it or sing it over the backtrack, they could have that as an option as well. Those are just a few of the projects that we've done.
And you've been doing modern band online somehow or other? Or not because they don't have the instruments?
Right, not
Yeah.
in terms of the physical playing of the instruments, but more through the use of music technology, virtual instruments, composition, listening, and the other aspects of modern band, yes.
Thanks, Chris, for volunteering and speaking up. Gina's got her hand up again.
Oh,
But that's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh,
Yes.
hi there. Yeah, my name's Karen Lee. I teach at UBC in Canada. And I'm interested in that someone had mentioned earlier, collaborative projects with mentors. Does somebody have any examples of that?
Well, I'm not sure what we were talking about, but I think when we mentioned that, we were talking about, I'm thinking about my students often in the semester before they student teach, they sort of identify where they're going to go. And so they work with, if in a physical sense, they would begin working in that school system with the two teachers that they were going to work with, or they may just be doing it with a friend that's there. And while I don't have direct experience with this because I'm on sabbatical this year, and so, but the sort of things that I meant was that they would be working with a public school teacher who was trying to teach remotely and trying to assist with that project. Now, I don't know if that's what, Michele, you might want to jump in because I don't know if that's what you meant.
Thank you. Karen, if you look in the chat, Brian Ackles just put up a link to a project that he's been doing. K post-secondary music students with older music students teaching younger musicians. You might check that out. Juliet Hess, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you. So I'm definitely interested in making this the best possible experience for students that is possible. But I'm also like thinking that post-secondary education is on this very, very steep, slippery slope towards something that many of us don't want to see in terms of like going online. So I'm wondering, and not to be a complete killjoy here, but how good do we want to get at this? Like, do you know what I mean? Like how?
I think I want to answer that. And if somebody else wants to jump in, you can. What in a perfect world for me would be is that you use it for what it's good for and you don't use it if it's not good for it. So one of the things that I think online teaching is excellent at is the sort of read, think, write teaching, which is things like history, music history. In fact, I teach a foundations course that a lot of that can be done online. If they're not but when we get, I can't imagine that we will get as good at teaching a methods class, like for instance, the cello lesson online as it would be face-to-face. It is something that can be done. The question is, should it be done? And for me, the answer to that is still no. It's still better to do it face-to-face if we can. But there are some things that I think are better online because it engenders more discussion. Even when I'm teaching a face-to-face class, this often online discussion boards so that my classes are sort of hybrid, because you get more student participation. In a face-to-face class, lots of times you get only some of the class participating. If you're requiring everyone to comment on some sort of prompt that you've put there and on at least a couple of their classmates, you get a lot more participation than you can get in a face-to-face class generally. So I think that it depends on what it is you're teaching. I'm not worried that my institution is going to go to teaching totally online. In fact, right now there's been some discussion with the deans about what's our most desperate need? What do we most desperately need to get back in the classroom for? And honestly, it turns out to be the ensembles in music and the science labs. Those are the most difficult to try to move onto an online format. Gina or anybody else want to add to that? Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, I'm still concerned.
Oh, I am too. I think they look at it as a way to save money. They look at it as a way to do other things. I still don't think that that is going to be the best format for the vast majority of students to learn the content they need to know.
Can I pipe in on this?
Sure.
Okay. Towards the end, like last couple of days of classes, I asked my students, okay, so how's this been working for you? And they said, well, we're surviving. It's, you know, some classes go better than others depending on what we're actually doing in them. But frankly, if it's going to be like this in September, I'm going to take a year off.
There you go. And I think to some extent, Michelle's students said that too. We're surviving. It can be okay. It's not a perfect world.
In which case, I think the other thing we need to worry about is a huge drop in enrollment, a huge drop in income for the institution, and the ramifications of, you know, just not having the funding.
Those are there anyway. We've had a 20% funding cut already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the things we really need to think about, though, is that hopefully this is a short-term problem, not a forever problem, but this might be a year or two problem. And to say we're just going to wait until the world is normal is short-sighted. There's plenty of ways of making music. There's plenty of ways of making community. Ensembles are fantastic, but if the only thing that an ensemble is good for is getting 80 people in a room, then we're not doing everything with an ensemble that we can be doing with it. It can't, the value of an ensemble has to be more than we all got together. I mean, we all know that that is true, that there's more happening there. So I think necessity is the mother of invention, and I'm thrilled to see what some of the inventions have been and what they will continue to be. Patrick Freer, you got a hand up and you're all corally.
Yeah, I just want to add to this that I remember that this is not about us. This is about the students, and they have one shot. And this is the year that they're with us. So we have a responsibility to do this, whatever it is we're going to do, the very best that we possibly can. We owe it to them, and I think we owe it to ourselves if we're going to model flexibility. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. But they won't have ideal circumstances in their schools either. So they'll be looking at us to see how we handle a not ideal circumstance.
Yeah.
Great point, Patrick. Thank you. Janet Welby, you had your hand up.
Hi, my name is Janet Welby. I'm with the UMass Lowell team. This question is for the K-12 teachers because I'm also still working with young people singing. I have very few of my group want to do anything online as far as performing, and they're coming to the choir check-ins that I'm having, but they're like, forget it. We don't want to do anything online. So how do you suggest we motivate? One person did make a nice comment about this. How do we motivate the students to try some of these things that we're going to be doing with them because they're very uncomfortable with this environment?
Thank you for that question, Janet. Liza Emanuel, did you want to answer that?
Sorry, computer issues. Hi, I'm Liza. I am a grade 6 to 8 choral teacher in Greenville, South Carolina. And motivation has been huge for me and my students. I really focused on, we had their relationship. So I'm like, oh, they're going to do whatever I want them to do. No, no, not even close. Not even. And once I, stroked my ego a little bit and realized that they were overwhelmed and they didn't ask to be virtual students, I was like, okay, what can I do? So I reached out to them. And when I did things like, okay, send me 30 seconds of a karaoke video, either with a background track or a cappella, and I'll give you feedback. That got them. Things like that. They wanted no part of their choral music, especially once we got the word that we weren't going back. They already felt like they had wasted that time, which they didn't. We know that, but that's how middle schoolers process. And so when I went to the personal kind of vocal instruction and let them have total choice over things like that, you pick a song that's school appropriate, and I'll give you some feedback back, or get together with people. I know we're not supposed to get together, but some of my kids were. I'm going to be honest, they were. And so I said, get in a small group and do something if you're allowed to. They loved that. That got them, and that was my highest turn-in assignments. So it was a little more social emotional, but for at least middle school, that's what I had to go to, was SEL more than content.
Thank you, Liza. Thank you for sharing that. That's great to know. Nicholas Dostman.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Dostman at the University of Southern Maine, and I primarily work with ensembles. I believe an earlier participant brought something, I think it was Chris Gilbert, that brought up an idea, is this all worth it to do these products? Is the product really important? And I don't want to put any of my students on the spot right now, but I am curious, how did you feel about having a product? Was it really worth it, considering that you went from planning a concert that was going to be 30 minutes of instruction or 30 minutes of performance down to one song? Did it feel like, was it gratifying to some extent?
Go ahead.
I definitely felt gratification from it. It was a lot less than I was expecting, and of course we were in such a rush at the end of the semester to at least get something out. So it was hard, and it wasn't necessarily the product that I originally envisioned, but in the end, it was something that I was proud of and something that I felt made an impact. And I really enjoyed that process, and I think a lot of my fellow classmates and chamber singers did as well, and at least I hope they did. I feel that it's very important to at least do something, especially going forward. If we're fully online, we'll be able to have more preparation and be able to create a more succinct work later on.
Bree?
Yeah, going off of that, I think having a final product to look forward to is definitely gratifying. And on the topic of motivation, that ended up being a huge motivating factor for me personally, to not just complete like my part of that project, but it would motivate me to see the end product of my other classes. Not to say that every course needs to be cumulative, but with this sort of learning style and this modality, having a final product and something to look and be proud of and to share with other people when that's not so accessible at the moment, like in person, that was huge, huge, huge for my motivation, not just in ensembles, but with other classes as well. Just being able to produce something that I could share with the world and not, or even just my peers, and be proud of that. And I found that it got me to focus on sort of the technical aspects of ensembles, and by technical I mean technology, which is not something that I would have considered at all had circumstances remained normal. So I ended up learning a lot more different things, but I think they're just as valuable, and they're things I wouldn't have learned otherwise.
Thank you, Bree. Emily?
For one of my ensembles, our assignment, along with sending in our own tracks to make a video was to send in videos of what we are doing during our time in quarantine and different ways that we are, things that are keeping us sane during this time. And we compiled that all together and put that video with our song. And I think it was really a cool way to connect with the other members of my ensemble and see what they were up to. And it added to that, the pride of making a finished product, seeing what my friends were doing. I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
We have a couple more raised hands.
Donald DeVito, your hand is up.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Don DeVito. I'm the Rawlings Elementary Center for Fine Arts. I just wanted to mention one of the things we were talking about in the discussion where students maybe didn't want to be online so much. I did want to just put this out there just from my own experience in getting students into Zoom. We use a Zoom link, but a lot of schools out there, when you have student teachers, if you have to have student teachers out in the field online and not in person, we use Zoom, but we put Zoom on a Google Classroom. So a lot of public schools are using Google Classroom. And sometimes getting students into their classroom for a Zoom lesson isn't necessarily that the students are interested or not. That could be part of it, but it's also that getting the students to log in at that particular time. Maybe a parent is at work, they're having internet issues, what have you. So I just wanted to give you an idea that we're using that really worked well. The homeroom teachers who are teaching the students as a group, like every day, they have the Google Classroom set up. So I would suggest having either the supervising teacher or your intern be allowed as a person in that homeroom Google Classroom. Then when they need to do some student teaching, they can, the student teacher, the supervisor, could then know a class maybe of a teacher who's really helpful, who's into it, and then they could do their student teaching through a Zoom link that's announced in the Google Classroom of the homeroom, not of the music classroom. Does that make sense? Because for the students who are with the homeroom teacher from 9 to 12 every day, and maybe they have to do one student teaching, if you do it in the homeroom classroom during their regular teaching time, or just maybe 30 minutes after their normal teaching time, so all the kids are still in the room virtually, that might help you out a lot when you're trying to set up the situation for your student teachers. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Dawn. Chris Gilbert, your hand is up.
Yes, I wanted to speak just about the ways that they're engaging the kids, different ways online, and how to get more participation. One of the things that I've noticed I've had more participation on is when I do shorter, more obtainable, time obtainable projects.
Yep.
Because we think these students, and I'm talking from the K-12 perspective, but also from the post-secondary, from the cultural perspective, is that functional digital literacy is very different from social and gaming digital literacy.
Yep.
And typically speaking, these students don't practice attaching documents to assignments on an everyday basis, and that's a skill they have to practice on a daily basis. So this functional digital literacy is something to keep in mind. But what my biggest participation was a May the 4th project where I gave them the snippet of the opening theme of the Star Wars theme, and they learned that opening theme. And I have 35 kids in my band, and I had a little more than half participate, I think, in the end. And that's usually, I'm hearing like most is like 20 to 30% participation, give or take. And the kids were like so into it. All the 8 measures, record the video, send it in via Flipgrid, and I edited the rest into a little Star Wars video for them. But they were tickled to pieces about that, and also did a masked bandy where they had to perform 8 measures of their favorite band song and do a musical tag of their choice, like McDonald's song, or one kid played Tequila because they had the music for jazz band, or they chose different musical tags as like a little bonus material. And they decorated their videos with stickers so you couldn't see their face. And we had a viewing party where we had to guess who the students were, and the kids. And the kids, I just delivered prizes today as candy, like of their choice for best sticker scene, best nickname, who fooled everybody, different prizes, and that got them. That participation went through the roof because it was connecting to this like pop culture kind of idea. But it was something fun, something little and small and accessible, but I also still got to assess them and hear them play their band music as well. So I tricked them into that part.
Teacher creativity is boundless, really. It's always amazing to me, all the cool projects that everybody comes up with. You know, we were talking about ensembles earlier, and I think that one of the things that's really neat about ensembles at this time is the opportunity to focus on some chamber music. Because while that giant virtual band or virtual chorus of 80 or 90 people is super hard to multi-track, smaller projects with 6 to 8 students are more manageable, perhaps more doable by students, particularly high school, college students can handle some of the alignment. It requires a different kind of listening than listening live to the 5 people you're singing with or playing with, but a kind of listening to the track and how do I line myself up with that, or multi-tracking with yourself. There's a skill where students are going to gain a lot of sudden insights about their rhythmic acuity. You know, so I think we have opportunities to learn some different things, and some of those things very much align with what professional musicians do, where they're all over the globe laying down a single track that gets sent off and somebody makes magic happen. And I understand that as teachers and professors running ensembles, and I do chamber music ensembles a fair amount, we're going to be the person who's doing production and sprinkling the magic production dust. But that is yet another opportunity for us to learn as well. So I don't know, I think that there's potential for new growth and new directions. That's kind of exciting. Cindy,
and I think too,
hooray.
Let me cut in for just a minute and then you can
sure,
have
sorry,
Cindy,
Jan.
okay? That's all right. I think the other thing we have to think about is that we've got to learn. That's how it's going to get better. The theme of this session was supposed to be about its collaborative learning, and it is. And the only way we're going to actually learn is to try things with our students and see what they do with it and get feedback on it. And that's the collaborative piece of this. We're all learning how to do this. There's some research out there that says this might work or that might work, but until you actually try it in a music setting, I don't think you know. And the only way you're going to get really good feedback on that is to talk with your students about it. Now, when you get 50% of your band out, your middle school band, and actually participating in a project, that's a different kind of feedback and great too. So I think we need to keep in mind that we're all learning and that this is an ongoing process, that it's not that just because we're done with it for now, and whether or not we have to do it in the fall, we still need to keep honing our skills in order to help them hone their skills. Now we can go back. I'll be quiet.
Cindy Perret?
Yes, I was just going to say, actually, with the multi-tracking with yourself that you were talking about, this is exactly what I'm having my students do right now. And they're at the end of their project. So basically, they had 5 parts to choose from. They had to choose 2, work on 2, and then it was a long-term project, which is probably maybe not what I should have done, but hey, we're all experimenting. So they sent me their first version, then I had to give them feedback, and now they're integrating everything into iMovie, and I'm getting emails, oh miss, it's not working, and my things are not together. So I'm very happy that I've done that kind of project, because they're seeing all these things on social media, right, that are coming out from these orchestras. They're like, oh wow, we should do this, this is awesome. And then they have to do it themselves, and they see that it's just so difficult. Oh, it's only because I missed one single beat. So I found that it was really great just to give them awareness of, oh, I really need to be precise on those kinds of things. And also, you were saying before that we had to make our learning meaningful for our students. I'm finding right now that the activities that I'm creating for them, they are meaningful. And when I have to be absent in the next few years, I'll have like this huge bank of activities that I can provide them with so that they can do. So I'm happy to be able to just create those activities right now.
Cindy, thank you for sharing that. And it made me think of some advocacy that we need to do. So we've run into a problem where we can't put 80 people together, and it's not feasible to produce 5 pieces of the 60 or 80 member ensemble. It's just the amount of time that it takes is too labor intensive. But we can do these kind of smaller projects. And we need to make a point of letting administration know that we haven't stopped teaching music and that there's all kinds of cool, great stuff that we can do. And this is how it's going to benefit our students, and this is what they're going to learn. And we need to provide them with that information because they more commonly see that large ensemble, see a concert date, and that might be their full understanding of what we do. And so reiterating, and endlessly reiterating apparently in our profession, that we're doing more than just putting on concerts, and that there are lots of ways to work, and that we can't wait for that concert to come back, but there are other things that we're going to do as we're preparing for that. And that kind of project that you described, that's great. Jody Stark, you have a hand up.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. First of all, it's really exciting hearing all of the people who are in-service teachers talking about all the incredible things that you've done with your students. I have to tell you that that alone has been worth the seminar for me, because I'm just so encouraged at what you're all doing, and that music education is alive and well at a really difficult moment. So congratulations and well done. Very exciting. What I'm thinking about in this conversation is what is important in my teacher ed classes. What is it that I want my students to leave with? And what I'm thinking about, and Michelle, you've already spoken to this, is connection, some sort of a community of practice. Part of it's, I want them to be reflective, reflective in about their pedagogy, trying stuff, evaluating what it is that went well, what could they do better, what would work better. Part of it's being growth oriented as a mark of professionalism and career-long growth for what they're going to start doing. And then part of it is thinking pedagogically. And what I'm realizing as we're all chatting is I can do all of those things online quite easily. I just can't have them teach kids in a real life classroom or teach each other in a real life class. But I'm starting to see the possibility that there are lots of things I could do if I start with those aims instead of trying to backtrack. This is what I normally do. How can I do that online? I don't know if that nuance makes sense, but I thought I'd share in case it was helpful to someone else too.
Thank you. Brian Widner?
I want to piggyback a little bit on what Jody was just saying. Kind of took the approach, again, like many of us that have really intensive practicum sorts of experiences embedded within our classes. It was looking at how can we have some benefit that still comes out of this, and started turning to our K-12 collaborators and just asking very simply, where are you seeing help needed? What are you trying to do with your classes that you don't have enough manpower for? And what it has turned into is something that's, has taken a very different sort of direction than perhaps we had intended it to. But our students are actually getting, I think, a lot more one-on-one time with students, and a lot more, I'm not going to say unsupervised time, but not having someone standing there looking over them as they're working with students, especially our sophomores and juniors. Our student teachers, another story. But early in their experience, being able to work with small groups of students, setting up a Zoom chat room and having them work with 3 students at a time and being able to really meaningfully address what's going on. Doing guided practice videos so students can work with music at home. And some of them have just turned in these products that are absolutely amazing. Okay, I want you to pause right now and you're going to practice that 3 times, then send me a video. Okay, now turn it back on and here's what you're going to do next. So we're getting, it's a different time frame. Everything becomes asynchronous in that. But some of the same sorts of experiences that I want them to have in the classroom, of being able to do instructional planning, of being able to do meaningful assessment, about being able to use that formatively, is something that they're now able to do in this new space. And some of it are going to be things I think that we continue moving forward, because I can supervise what's going on a lot more easily because I can be in all of those spaces and see all of it happening in the same sort of time that the students do.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think the idea that our students can teach a little more freely in somebody else's space, and also that they can work with 3 or 4 students at a time instead of with everybody all at once. It really gives them a lot of room to be more teacherly and to have to kind of summon their teacher powers, whereas they might have relied on the teacher in the classroom or the university supervisor in the classroom prior. When they're in a breakout room, they kind of have to think on their feet a little faster. So thank you for that. That was a great set of ideas. Are there any other comments? Joe Bramo, you had your hand up a second ago.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate what the last 2 comments, and I guess the ways that I've been thinking about it, I'm so happy that everyone said this. And it seems to me like, you know, we tend in teacher ed to have kind of 2 perspectives. One is the kind of dispositional processes where we try to shore up the dispositions of teachers and try to get them to think differently and, again, gather the dispositions of being an effective teacher. It seems like that can be done online. It seems like we can do these sort of discrete competencies and skills online, this sort of, as Brian was just saying, this idea of like, you know, do that thing again and be able to do this conducting technique or hear this error, that sort of stuff. I think as a teacher educator, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, it's going to probably take me all summer and then longer, is to think, how do we meld those 2 together to make authentic practice online? It's easy to do one, it's easy to do the other. It doesn't seem possible to me right now to be able to meld them into a set of, you know, core practices that these students can practice. And that concerns me very much, because when you focus purely on skills or you focus purely on dispositions, they get out into the field and they have praxis shock. And so I'd love to hear if anybody have any ideas on that particular thing.
I think it's an ongoing process that we're going to have to continue. I wasn't giggling, Joe, at you. I was giggling at the comment.
Jan.
Yeah, I know. Janet Welby just put in a comment that said, "I don't think you can recreate online the terror of facing a classroom full of kindergartners for the first time." And I was thinking of past experiences with students who found that quite an intimidating setup. I think you're right. And I think sometimes we tend to focus on one to the exclusion of the other. And I think most of the stuff that I've seen, and it may be that I'm just limited in what I've seen on excellent practice in online teaching, doesn't do a good job of melding the 2 either. They tend to either focus on the read, think, write classes, because those are easier to teach online. And there are a few things about how to go about doing the praxis more based things. But the melding of the 2 and the getting the students so that they don't have that sense of praxis shock. And frankly, I don't think I've ever gotten my students to the point where they don't have praxis shock. And until, you know, it's probably showing my age, but until they do a year-long partially paid internship, I'm not sure we're going to avoid that sort of praxis shock. Because what you do when you're in somebody else's classroom is very different from when you're finally out there on your own. And we do not do internships the way they could be done if money was no issue, okay? And I really feel that that whole business of praxis shock has gotten far less attention than it should. They worry about turning out quality teachers and they want them to have so many hours and so forth, but so many hours is not the same as being an intern where you're actually in charge of something and someone is supervising you. So I think, Joe, you raised good points, and they will be things that I will think about as well.
Well, I believe it's time for us to draw our evening to a close. I would like to thank my presentation partners, Janice Smith, Bree Hall, Emily Lascatra, Esri Donangelo. I'd like to thank each of you who contributed and who attended tonight. Tonight's session, as well as session 1 from last week, can be found on YouTube. If you simply search the title of this conference, Music Teacher Education in the Age of COVID-19. Session 1's video should appear. It takes me about a week to clean this up, and then session 2 will be there as well. Please use the same Zoom link and join us on Monday, June 1st for session 3 of this conference. It will be featuring Carlos Abril from the University of Miami with one of his mentoring partners, Ryan Gardner. I will be there joined by one of my mentoring partners, Melissa Shabo, and we're going to be discussing student teaching and mentors, exploring new dimensions in internship. This concludes session 2 of Music Teacher Education in the Age of COVID-19. Thank you all for joining. Be well, be safe, and hope to see you all live soon.